Hello, I'm Otto Penzler, and I'm here at the Mysterious Bookshop in New York City. I'm in my office, and we're going to do our little show today about collecting in the world of mystery fiction. And one of the people that I have loved most as a reader in my life and also as a collector was John Dickson Carr. I made the dreadful mistake when I was young of falling so in love with his books that I read everything one right after the other. So to this day, I remember many of the scenes that occurred in these books, the impossible crimes for which he's so famous, but I frequently forget which book the various murder methods occurred in. To this day, I have that problem remembering, like, wait a minute, was that the bow and arrow? Or was that the crossbow? Or was that a knife? You know, which book was which? Uh, but Carr was an interesting person in many ways. A lot of people think of him as English, but he's not. He was born in Pennsylvania, and spent some time in Paris, and then came back to America, and then met a an English woman, Clarisse, and wound up moving to England. He also liked the idea; thought it was a good setting for writing mysteries. He started writing mysteries when he was in high school, and his first books were published when he was still quite young. And he was very prolific, and wrote so many books that he wound up having to use two different names, and went to two different publishers. In addition to John Dickson Carr, of course, he wrote as Carter Dixon. The first book that he wrote under the pseudonym was Carr Dixon, and his publisher, as John Dickson Carr, objected and said, "Wait a minute." So they went to Carter Dixon to make it better, but it still didn't fool too many people. And they didn't try to keep it a secret. Um, he stayed in England for quite a long time. Then, when a Labour government took over in England, he said, "I don't like herd living." And he came back to America and lived the rest of his life in South Carolina. But earlier, when he lived in America, he lived in Westchester County, the same place that Frederick Dane, half of the Ellery Queen team, and Clayton Rawson, the author of the great Merlini impossible crime stories, also lived. And the three of them knew each other very well. They became good friends and spent a lot of time together. I would love to have been there when Carr, Queen, and Rawson were talking about impossible crimes and what to do. It would have been just too amazing. Um, But unfortunately, I don't have a lot of great John Dickson Carrs to show you, because they're quite rare in Dust Jacket. The early books are extremely rare and very expensive, but I do have some first editions without Dust Jackets that I can show you. The books that he wrote as John Dickson Carr were all published by Harper, and it's easy to tell Harper first editions. I'm going to show you Death Watch first. This is a book in which a person is stabbed in a dark house, and there are three witnesses, and all of them vouch for each other. So here's how to tell a first edition. It says on the copyright page, look, first edition. It's not a major challenge. This is what Harper did in all of its time. So if you get a Harper book and it doesn't say first edition, it's not a first edition. It's that simple. They were pretty rigorous about doing that for all of their books. They didn't do it every now and then. They did it all the time. Here's another. This is a very early book. Like Death Watch, it was in the 30s, and this also is in the 30s. This is 1934, and there again, the first edition on the copyright page. Here's the Emperor's Snuff Box. This is a dust jacket. This is a little more expensive. This is $175. Those, the Blind Barber is $75 just to, yeah. And Death Watch was also $75. This is $175 because the dust jacket is more expensive than the book because it's rarer. It was very common in this era for people to throw away the dust jackets almost all the time. It was used as it was viewed as an advertising element for the book, and people got it home and tossed the jacket. This is an interesting book, The Murder of Sir Edmund Godfrey, which is frequently called non-fiction, but it is fictionalized, and this is a little bit more uncommon than some other books. There's Sir Edmund Godfrey, but it's got many elements of fiction to it. This is the British edition, printed in Bath, and it's got a clip dust jacket. And I have to tell you, when I first started collecting books 50-something years ago, there were a couple of bookstores on Fifth Avenue, not rare books. I was just collecting new books, reading them, and then saving them and collecting them. And there were a couple of very good bookshops on Fifth Avenue, Doubleday and Brentano's. And when you walked up with a hardcover book and you went to the counter, on a chain was a pair of scissors. And when the sales clerk would take the book from your hands, she'd immediately reach for the scissors and clip the dust jackets, because everyone assumed that it was a hardcover book. It would be a gift. Otherwise, you'd buy a paperback. And so they clipped the price off so that you wouldn't be showing how much you paid for your gift. John Dickson Carr was a great Sherlockian. He loved Sherlock Holmes. In fact, his best-selling book of all time was a biography of Arthur Conan Doyle, and it was authorized by the estate, and he had become friends with Adrian Conan Doyle, Arthur Conan Doyle's eldest son, and he made archives available to Carr so that he could write the definitive biography. One of the other things that happened was that he co-authored with Adrian Conan Doyle the exploits of Sherlock Holmes. And I don't know what kind of a writer Adrian was, but Carr was pretty good. And this is a reprint. It was originally published in the 50s, and this is much later. But it's just an example of the kind of thing that Carr could do. And these ran in magazines in America, in Life magazine, and then they were collected in book form, both in England and the United States. This is a cool little thing that most people have never heard of. It is a pair of round-robin novels where each of these authors would contribute a chapter, which ran in newspapers in England, and then were collected in book form. Now, as I said, Carr also wrote as Carter Dickson. We, in the American Mystery Classics series, we've been reissuing some of the John Dickson Carr books. The Plague Court Murders is a particularly interesting book. It was originally published by Carter Dickson, but the John Dickson Carr name is so much better known that we changed the byline on the book. The series character that he used in many of his John Dickson Carr books was Dr. Gideon Fell, who was based on G.K. Chesterton, who was a great hero to Carr. He was one of Carr's favorite writers. They didn't agree about a lot of things, particularly politics, but Carr was a great aficionado. And when Carr was living in England, He was elected to the Detection Club, which was a very, very small, very specific and picky club with all kinds of rituals, and you had to be invited, and I think it was only 12 people. Dorothy Sayers, Agatha Christie, and all of the great Golden Age writers in England at that time were members of the club, and Carr was happy to be accepted into the club because he was going to get to meet G.K. Chesterton, who was running the Detection Club at that time. Before his first meeting, Chesterton died, and so he never got to meet him. And then Carr was elected president of the Detection Club. Here's some more. Here's what the Carter Dickson books look like. He was all of his books with Harper as John Dickson Carr, but all of his books as Carter Dickson were published by William Morrow. This is another impossible crime in which a man is clubbed to death in a pavilion that is surrounded by snow with no markings on it. It's just, I mean, once you hear the premise, don't you want to read it? Now, William Morrow is a different system from Harper. Actually, let me show you a different book. They don't do anything on the copyright page if it's a first edition. Here's a typical William Morrow copyright page, and there's nothing on it to show that it is a first edition or that it's not a first edition, but that's how they showed a first edition. And the reason I switched to a different book is because this is what they did when the book was reprinted. They would tell you it's a second or third or whatever the printing it is. So it's easy to tell first edition. And here's another first edition, Death in Five Boxes, 1938. And that is the way the copyright page generally looked on a first edition by William Morrow. Now, I want to show you the auction catalog. I'm sorry, I should have brought it with me. Bear with me, just talk amongst yourselves for a minute. This is so unprofessional of me. I apologize for this, but I want to show you what the
There's one on the back cover.
What the books looked like when they had dust jackets. This was at an auction last year of my books, and to give you an idea of how expensive they are, there's a copy of It Walks by Night. That's his first book. It sold for $4,600. The Lost Gallows, $2,200. You can see the rest on that page. And then The Mad Hatter Mystery, $14,000. But all of these are John Dickson Carr books, first editions, in really excellent dust jackets, which is why they're so expensive. Mostly they set world records because of the condition of the dust jackets, which are extremely scarce. So if you want to collect John Dickson Carr, either be prepared to wait 40 or 50 years to have them all in dust jacket, or collect the best copies that you can without dust jacket. Thank you.